All right, let's dive into Kazuo Ishiguro's masterpiece, An Artist of the Floating World. But this isn't going to be your typical book report. Nope. We're actually going to dissect the mind of its narrator, Masuji Ono, and try to understand the psychology of a man who literally rewrites his own past. Welcome to The Anatomy of a False Memory.
This one phrase, this is basically the key that unlocks the entire novel. Ono says it or something like it all the time, and it gets you thinking, right? What happens when an artist, a guy who's a master of creating images and telling stories, turns that talent on himself? What happens when a man's own memory becomes his greatest and most deceptive work of art? Okay, so here's the setup. We're in post-war Japan, somewhere between 1948 and 1950, and our guide is Masuji Ono, a retired painter. Now, back in the day, during Imperial Japan, he was a big deal, a respected artist, a man of influence. But now, in this new Americanized Japan, his reputation is completely stained by the very art that once made him famous. As Ono starts telling you about his life, you pretty quickly realize that something is off. The details keep shifting, the conversations feel a little too perfect, and his role in big events seems to, change depending on the day. So we're basically becoming detectives here, trying to dig up the truth that's buried under all these carefully crafted stories.
So the big question is, how does Ono protect himself from a past he just can't bring himself to face? Well, he uses one of literature's most fascinating tools, the unreliable narrative. This thing becomes his memory's ultimate defensive shield.
But here's the thing about Ono. He isn't just an old man with a spotty memory. No, his unreliability is strategic. It's a deliberate, maybe subconscious act of self-preservation. It forces us, the readers, to constantly read between the lines and question pretty much everything he tells us.
And the central metaphor of the whole book is this idea of the floating world. Historically, that was a real place, the pleasure districts of old Japan. But Ishiguro completely flips it. He turns it into a psychological state. For Ono, the floating world isn't a place he goes to, it's the place he lives in. It's this hazy, unstable world of memory where who you are is always changing. And just listen to the way he talks. These little phrases are his go-to moves. But don't be fooled, they aren't signs of a bad memory or him being humble. No, this is all tactical. He's creating this fog of uncertainty to soften the blow of his own guilt, trying to make his worst actions seem like, just honest mistakes. So yeah, his memory is one giant defensive shield. He's not really remembering the past, he's curating it. It's like he's an editor chopping up a film. He cuts out the bad parts and polishes the scenes that make him look better, or at least more tragic. It's all about protecting an ego that just can't handle the truth.
A huge symbol for this is the Bridge of Hesitation. It used to be a real bridge leading to the pleasure district, but for the older Ono, it's become a metaphor for his own mind. He is permanently stuck on that bridge, right? He's caught between confessing what he did and doubling down on his own lies. He's just trapped in this psychological limbo. Okay, so what is he so guilty about? What did he actually do? Well, it all comes down to one massive choice. He turned his art away from personal expression and into straight-up political propaganda. And you can see this pivot so clearly in his work. He started out painting the floating world, all about its fleeting beauty. But he started to think that style was just decadent, totally out of touch. He wanted to be relevant, so he jumped on this new patriotism bandwagon, creating these stern propaganda pieces that basically fueled the war machine. He literally traded beauty for ideology. But this wasn't just about painting posters. Oh no. His new beliefs had real, absolutely devastating consequences for the people who were closest to him. Let's talk about the story of his most promising student, a guy named Kuroda. The way Ono tells it, it was just a simple disagreement. He was just a disappointed mentor, concerned about his student's lack of patriotism. He totally downplays his own role, making it sound like some minor, well-intentioned mistake. But the reality, which you have to piece together from the holes in his story, is brutal. Ono informed on his own student to the secret police. His actions directly led to Kuroda being arrested, tortured, and having all of his paintings burned. This is the dark secret at the heart of it all. This is the truth that his defensive shield was built to hide. And that betrayal and the whole ideology behind it still haunts Ono in the present day. He's totally isolated, caught in this conflict between his own generation and a new Japan that he doesn't even recognize anymore. I mean, the generational gap is massive. For Ono, the war years were this time of honor and purpose. For his son-in-law, who actually fought in the war, it was all misguided lunacy. While Ono's clinging to old traditions, his own grandson is obsessed with American cowboys and Popeye the Sailor Man. Everything Ono built his life on has been thrown out, leaving him totally alone. So what's a guy like him to do? He becomes what some analysts call a sad monologist. He performs his guilt. His confessions, they're not really for forgiveness, they're for significance. See, he would rather be seen as this grand, tragic figure whose mistakes had huge consequences than admit what he really is, an irrelevant old man whose entire belief system is now worthless. And this is where Ono's personal story becomes so much bigger. His own internal struggle is really a mirror for the struggle of an entire nation. Think about it. Ono's self-deception is just a tiny version of a massive national identity crisis. In post-war Japan, the truth was totally up for grabs. Yesterday's heroes were today's war criminals. The whole nation was trying to deal with its own guilt, rewriting its own history just to survive. In this kind of post-truth world, Ono's personal memory editing was just part of a much bigger trend. And in the end, he never finds any peace. He's trapped in what's been called a long anxiety dream. The floating world isn't a place anymore. It's not even just a metaphor. It has become his permanent mental prison, a state of constant anxious evasion where the past is never settled because he's always redrawing it. So what's the devastating conclusion? It's that Ono isn't some monster. He's something even more tragic, perhaps. He's just a man who, because he was so desperate to be important and create art with a purpose, sacrificed his own humanity for a kind of glory that was as fleeting as the lantern light in the floating world he left behind. And that leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling question. I mean, Ono's case is extreme, for sure, but it makes you look at your own memories, doesn't it? How much of the story you tell about your own life is the absolute truth, and how much of it is a story you've carefully built, a defensive shield to help you get by?